Hello, everyone who is there. I think you guys can hear me. I hope so. Um, I am so happy that Ellis invited me to come talk. I will tell you that the topic of let's see, general education. Okay, that's not to me. The topic I want to talk about is something that's very close to my heart because a buddy of mine and I had a problem a few years ago where we were several nights a week going to bed stressed out, not having gotten through what we thought we'd get through that day. And his wife and my fiance sort of got on us and said, you know what, the problem is you. It's like you're not being intentional. You're not really managing your attention and your day. And there are a lot of books and a lot of like smart minds that have written about this. Why don't you try that? So, what I wanted to share with you today is what we learned about flow states. And I'll tell you specifically how we apply that to a product that we make. So, how many? I guess maybe in the chat, if you guys could drop in here, how many people have had that phenomenon of like, hey, I feel like I should have gotten this done, but I didn't get it done today, or I knew I was drifting, and you know, I wanted to. Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is definitely something where there are okay. That's what I figured. This is something that caused us a lot of stress where we were wondering, like, kind of what's wrong with us. And I'll tell you, and be very blunt here, is when you read the books by the smart people who've written about this, often the books have their own vocabulary and their own framework, but the central principles of how to manage your attention are generally the same. And when you read the books back to back, it really stands out. You're like, wow, okay. And this is what we learned was one of the most influential things we read was, the book Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And what I'd like to do today is this. First, I want to walk you through a presentation that I've been doing a lot for hackathons and other groups that want to learn about flow states. So it's kind of fun to look at, kind of fun to listen to, and it's an overview of this phenomenon that Mihai named. I also have a PDF that I can give you guys. I'll give it to Ellis, which is much more detailed. It's more made for reading on your own than it is for seeing in this presentation, and that will be available to you too. So let me dive in by starting to screen share, and we're going to cross our fingers because this worked a second ago with Ellis. Okay, I think you guys can see my screen. So let us begin. This is what I was referencing, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, that he came up with this term flow because he had noticed this phenomenon in certain people where they could get in a highly concentrated state. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is what were the characteristics of this state that he named flow? And what were the contributing factors that helped someone get into it? And I know that there are some things specifically Alice and I have talked about what kind of rituals, what kind of like habits can keep you on track and have served to keep me on track. And I'm going to talk about that a bit. But the most important foundational work here was done by Mihai, where he said, I'm going to call this phenomenon flow because it feels like the people describing this concentrated state are being carried along. It's the momentum of not just their work, but they're almost like on a river and it's moving them towards their goal. And that, now that I've experienced that, now that I have practiced like how to get myself into flow, it is a beautiful phenomenon because you wake up from that, an hour, 2 hours later, and you're like, wow, I got everything done. But you also feel like you were in control as opposed to being controlled by distractions. And that's a big thing for me, which I will talk about. So anyway, this is a great book to read. I will summarize some of the key ideas here. One of the key principles here is how do you manage the ability for distractions to get at you? Of course, this is very hard right now, not just because some of us do wrestle with being distraction prone, but also the largest market cap companies in the world employ the best designers and engineers to use supercomputers to make sure that you're distracted because they want your attention to sell to advertisers, right? That is their entire business model. And it's a phenomenon relatively new in the history of civilization. It's not just, oh, I'm distracted, but it's like, wow, the richest companies on earth just serve these advertisers to distract me. There are things you can do both with your environment as well as your computer setup, as well as your oral and visual environment that can be helpful. And we'll talk about that. Focus, which is kind of the goal, is one of the things that Mihai talked about, and I'm going to talk about this on a later slide in more detail, but he said to have this feeling of focus, you have to know what it is you're doing, and you have to be matched with the task in a certain way. So you have skills that apply towards it, but it's still challenging to you. And, like someone on a tightrope trying not to fall off from, being focused, when you do get in that zone, it's interesting how the tightrope is as wide as you need it to be. It looks very, skinny when you're unfocused. When you're in focus, it's just like walking. Now, here I sort of mixed some sports psychology with some artists, because when I was writing about this, he said, you find this phenomenon of being in this concentrated state where peak performers do great work. And it can be artists, famously, Picasso talking about being up all night, forgetting to go pee, forgetting to eat, forgetting to do a lot of things, and then waking up in the morning and, there is this work, Guernica or whatever. And the similar thing, you hear with athletes, where I know there's a famous quote of Michael Jordan's where he's like, it's just me and the ball. Like, he gets into a state where there's no crowd in the stands, there's no clock, there are no defenders. It is just him and the ball. And that feeling is transcendent. You get it with musicians, you find it in a number of areas, and you can find it with people who have work to do on their computers, knowledge workers. This is what I was saying, is like, once he determined, like, he had this phenomenon, I want to call it flow, is that many people can access it. It is not just artists, it's not just athletes, it's not just, musicians and stuff like that. So this might be the most interesting slide of this part of our talk. And I'm going to spend a minute on this because this is sort of seminal ideas that he put forth. He said, here are the things that I've found that help people in flow states. Number one, and I mentioned this, is that it's hard to get into flow if you don't have a clear goal. If you don't have organized, yourself into, this is what I am doing, then it's very hard to get into a transcendent state. And the goal has to be challenging but attainable, he said. And by that he meant challenging in that it is not like folding laundry. It's not something that's just mindless, but it actually requires you to focus on it. But attainable in that you do have skills that apply for you to do this thing. So the joke about, Picasso might be in flow painting, but if you were asked him to play basketball, you have a hard time getting to flow. And the converse of Michael Jordan trying to paint, probably not going to get in a flow state because the skills don't really apply towards that. The focused attention, I think, is, obvious. And activities that are intrinsically rewarding. He said, one of the things that seems very common about the people he interviewed about how does this feel and how do you get into it is that if you look at the task at hand, and many of you are in different fields, I know there are many editors and publishers and things like that, but you have a lot of tasks that you are confronted with completing. And if you can find what is the internal reward, like what is the feeling of accomplishment that you will get, it is a key component of being able to get into flow. It almost like it makes your brain believe that this is worth dropping into a flow state for. And when you drop in, this is another, now I'm on to number 4, is that another characteristic of flow state is similar to the Picasso thing, where it's, you stop being very aware of yourself and you're more lost in the work for a moment. And I know that there's a lot of conversation and research around, hyper focus and can this be healthy or unhealthy? And, how can that be harnessed? Flow is not dissimilar in that when you're in flow, you're not really thinking about, am I itchy? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Do I got to go to the bathroom? Stuff like that. You become very focused on like, what is this thing that I'm thinking and feeling in front of me? And that same thing is coupled with a loss of sense of time. One of the most common things people say after their first or second flow state, they're like, wow, I looked up And I didn't realize how much time had gone by, whether it was shorter or longer. It's like 2 hours had gone by. It felt like 5 minutes to me. Or an hour went by, but I got 3 hours worth of stuff done. My brain was just moving through things, and it's an amazing feeling. The feedback from the activity, he also found was important in that your brain, to stay in flow, to keep in this respirative flow, if you will, does need feedback. It's hard to simply just dig and dig and dig with no sense if what you're doing is good. I'm going to give you an example of that. Engineers, the ability, because engineers love flow states, the ability to quickly in a simulator run your code, like code for half an hour and go, okay, let me see if that does what I think it will do. And, pull up a sim and say, okay, great. Like that feedback is really important to having your brain want to stay in this. The seventh point I actually think is very close to the first one, which is it is that thing of you have to have some skills, but this has to be a challenge to you, right? So if it is a great golfer, it's not like you just want to putt all day long and you be in a flow state. You have to have some challenge, even if you do have skills to apply towards it. And the lack of awareness of physical needs, we've talked about, it's really tied to loss of self-consciousness. So let's move forward. So one of the things I want to talk about in this section is flow state, is this idea something that Mihai named, but maybe it doesn't actually have any sort of like neurological or physiological relationship? And there's a really interesting study that was done about this. This guy, Charles Lim at Johns Hopkins, said, you know what? What if I watched with a functional MRI, an fMRI machine, the brains of people who are telling me they're in a flow state? Maybe I can observe if anything changes in their neural activity. So he set out to figure out who could he get and stick in fMRI. And interestingly, he chose freestyle rappers, because there's definitely that sense of like, being in a rap battle or something like that, where it's like you just have to be in the moment. And he also chose jazz musicians and that improvisational thing in music where you really have to be completely aware of what's going on around you, but you're also creating at the same time. And what he found was this, is that when they reported that they'd been in flow, it was coupled with the times when their prefrontal cortex had very little activity, which is interesting because that is related to the part of your brain that does have a consciousness of self, that can be, second guessing of yourself, that can, keep you wondering like, how am I doing? And what are other people thinking of me? That self-consciousness. And that relates very much to what Mihai wrote years ago, saying like, there seems to be this loss of self-consciousness, right? So that was fascinating to know there was an observable neural sort of activity that accompanied flow. And then this is something that Ellis and I have talked about, which is if there is a positive benefit of flow, of being in a flow state, of saying, oh, you know what, I can find this concentrated state. Hopefully it helps me with my, predisposition to be distracted, to want to multitask, to do things like that. Then what are the ways to be well while doing this hyper-focused thing? And we very much encourage, and I'll talk to you how this was centered, that even if you're going to go into a flow state, that you recognize there's a physiological relationship you have to work, which is, for example, your brain glucose. A lot of studies have shown that in heavily concentrated work, around 90 minutes in is where your brain glucose peaks, and it starts to decay after that. And that's why sometimes if you sit there, in your third hour of trying to do something, it's really hard. Like your brain's kind of out of gas. And that is a strong argument to say, whether it's Pomodoros, like 25 and 5s largely, or another, cadence at which you take breaks, it is really important to say, I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to give myself this amount of time. Personally, I do 55 and 5s because I find 25 minutes is just when I start to get into something. And it's hard to take a break right then for 5. It kind of kills my flow. But whatever that cadence is for you, is to say, I'm going to make a deal with myself that at the end of this cycle, I am going to either go get a glass of water, I'm going to go walk around, I'm going to stretch like this guy, I'm going to focus my eyes in the distance because I imagine, with what y'all do, there's a lot of staring at the screen that is 14 inches away and not the best thing for your eyes to do that all day long. And that's just another important concept there. So I hope this was fun to look at. There's another deck, which I will show you here, which I will give to Ellis. And this really details a lot of what I talked about. If any part of this you want to revisit, talk about, Charles Limb and the prefrontal cortex stuff. So there is that. And before I show you what we've, there are a lot of comments. Oh boy. Okay, cool. Okay, sweet. Thank you guys for all the comments. So let me say this. I would love to show you what we built, something that, how Alice and I actually met each other. And before I do that, if you have questions about this portion, I would love to field them. And then I can show you a tool that actually helps with getting into a flow state. So I will right now stare at the chat and see if anyone has any questions. It looks quite stare. If no one has any questions, totally cool. I will proceed forward. You've been a lovely audience. Thank you for coming. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything post. Okay, if you have questions, been pretty clear, sir. Thank you, Ritika. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so I'm going to assume that this part makes sense. If you have questions, you'll ask at the end. So I'm going to I think I'm still screen sharing, yes. And let's open up. Let me show you. This is Centered. And the way Centered works is you pull this up before you start work. You can hit play.
Ready for a great flow session today? Me too. Let's go.
Oh, am I right? I was using Centered to prep for the conference right before this. So Centered is basically a tool. It's a website or an app you can run on your laptop, and it runs in the background while you work. What does it do? It plays music, which right now I have muted so you can hear me, but normally you can hear music. You can choose lots of different playlists. There's binaural beats if you like that. There's up tempo, downbeat. There's 2 hours of rain. Our audio engineer was in the Himalayas and recorded our rain. You can hook up your Spotify. So in Centered, when you fire it up right before you work, it'll provide with music. It will also block your notifications. So it will put your computer in do not disturb and create like a beautiful bubble around you. You're not getting SMS and DMs and WhatsApps and emails, push notifications. In addition, there's a timer, so you can see how long you've worked. Like I started this 1 minute ago. I'm actually going to mute the music so you can hear me better. And you can also toggle. I think I mentioned to you I was doing 50-minute sessions. So you can toggle time to next break and time worked. Up here, to help monotask, you can type in what it is you're working on. Super lightweight, super simple. But then every time I look up, it reminds me, okay, you know what? That's what I should be working on. I can mark this complete.
I'm sending you a high five from far away. Nicely done.
And what you just heard is we have AI coaches, and we have hundreds of them that have contributed their voices so that you can work, and a friendly voice who welcomes you, who when you start your session, who congratulates you when you finish something, when you open up a distracting app, will nudge you. I think Ellis can tell you something about this if she decides to share in that regard. Let me give you an example. Like if I open up, say, here's what I'm saying. Okay, suppose I am working Google Docs and I'm being really good, blah, 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 right? And then I decide I'm going to go open up YouTube. And you may notice that Centered started flashing red, like, why are you in there? And on my other screen where you can't see it, there's a little pop-up that says, is YouTube distracting you? And then, if I don't get out of it.
Seems like you're not in flow anymore.
So my coach will come in. They'll give me like 10 seconds to see if I was just passing through the tab or not. And nudge me, be like, hey, do you need to be in YouTube? Is Twitter distracting you? Is TikTok really, part of your task? So that's kind of a fun thing. And see what else. It also, one of the things we talked about with Flow is what's a really easy way to prioritize and keep your tasks together. So what we did is we built some simple task management. Obviously, if I'm just going to do one thing, I could type it in here, do my TPS reports. And if I decide I want to keep a track of more, I can list in here what I want to get done in this session. Like, let's say this was going to take me 30 minutes. And let's say I want to copy it. I'm going to do some more things. I can copy these, go up here, boom, drop them in, and then make little tasks for them. And I can, drag and drop and do all the usual things you can do here. And the fun part of this is it will tell me to get this done with the estimate that I have. It'll take me about 2.5 hours. So I get a sense of how long I need, available to accomplish this. The idea is here, of course, while you're working, it reminds you this is what you're working on. So you're monotasking. With this, we want you to organize yourself, prioritize when you start your session, and also time box. Time box is another one of these great principles everyone talks about. I've tried it. A whole bunch of our users try it. And we give this to you right out of the bat. You can basically just type in and say, TPS report's actually only going to take me 15 minutes, but these very important things are going to take me an hour. And you know what? I decided very important things should be done first. So I'm going to start that, and then you can see I'm working on very important things. I will also mention that you can hook up your calendar. And in this case, where am I? Oh, like Saturday, because there's nothing in my calendar. So this is not very exciting, but normally you can hook up your calendar and you will see what spaces you have to work, so you can book your work in. This QR code, if anyone gets distracted by their phone, I'll show you a fun little trick. I can take my phone and essentially lock it by shooting that QR code. I don't know if you saw that, but that just became a phone connected. So what it is my phone right now, I can put it down, but if I background that website I just pulled up, it'll know. And my coach, again, will come back in like, hey, are you in TikTok? What are you doing? You'll probably hear her in a moment. She'll say something.
You've got this. Put the phone down.
So you get the idea. Then I stop doing that, put the phone down, and she's happy again. And when I finish my session,
Yes, another session in the bag.
I get a score, which basically helps me measure how well am I monotasking, how often we get distracted. This is obviously not a great score, 349. It goes 200 to 800, but it does allow me to see day over day. Am I getting better at these core principles of organizing myself, hooking up my phone, watching what apps I use, time boxing and hitting my estimates. And some coaches in here, like Ariana Bradford, the group that I'm in right now, ADH Done. Let me show you her group. She's
What's up, suckers? Ariana here. This is my centered group for ADHDers who are looking to get stuff done without losing their minds. So if that sounds like you, come check it out.
So she is an ADHD coach, and she offers coaching sessions right on the app. So if you need to spend 30 minutes getting unstuck, you can book her here. If you want to go over like a weekly battle plan, you can book her here, and stuff like that. And that's kind of the way Centered works. Let's see how to turn this off. Am I back? Okay, we're back. I see messages. Is that the Dr. Pearls before Sunday? I think it is, as a matter of fact. Good catch. There were a bunch of messages. Okay, so are you supposed to be on Facebook? Yes, totally. All these. Can you choose message? Don't feel shaming. Yes, Zabreen, I see your message, and there are many coaches. Some are super serious, some are super funny, some are like French, some are Spanish. Like you can cruise through and find the group. There's a group chat. People are often asking each other, like, "Hey, does anyone else Pomodoro? How does it work for you? How do you do this technique? How do you do that technique?" So there's a lot of support in there. You can choose a group that feels appropriate for you. TPS reports, Michelle. I'm glad you got that joke. Thank you, Ellis. I shame myself. No, yeah, Jamie. Yes, agreed. It's totally about which coach you choose. That's right. I like that. Doesn't it listen? Oh, thank you, Eleanor. Okay. Yes, and you can maybe discover Ellis. I don't know if Ellis wants to talk about that.
So yes, there is a neurodivergent. We have our own group on there, and it is my voice doing the coaching. So if you would like to join that, a lot of people use it. I think it's the Neurodivergent Publishing Lounge, if I recall properly. Yep.
I think I have it.
Okay. Yeah, so you can log in there, and you will hear my voice talking to you. As far as my coaching goes, it is encouraging and a little goofy. So you're going to hear some laughing and some goofiness. Stephen just shared a link to directly that group. So
if you click that link, you can sign up for Centered, and you go straight into Alice's group, and you can hear her coach you. And if you want to just read more about Centered in general, like what is this thing, just go to centered.app/ADHD. Any other questions? I'm staring at the comments right now.
I actually have a question. So if people are going to ask, like, what's the difference between the free and paid? You should probably mention that.
Sure. We originally built this as a paid app, like $8 a month, $10 a month, in that range. You can, thank you, Laura. You can get it for a year for $80, so it's about $6 and change a month. And then there was a junior at Northwestern who wrote to us and said he wanted to intern for us. He's a computer science student. And he said, I use it every day. I love it. And we interviewed him. He was really bright. He is still with us. And we hired him. And one of the first things he said is, you don't realize this, but almost all my friends in college have some sort of neurodivergence, some sort of ADHD thing. And he said, but we can't pay. Like, we're on the discounted Netflix plan. We're on the discounted everything plan. He said, so even $8 a month for students is a little much. What do you think about offering for students for free? And we realized that was probably very aligned with our mission, is that it's not about, hey, do you have the money to overcome your distractions? It's rather, we built this. If you can pay for it, we'd love for you to pay for it to help us keep the servers on and pay ourselves. If you need it and you don't have money, you can use most of the features. You can get the coaches, you get some of the music, not all the music. You get a bunch of the features to play with, because we think it's a real crisis in the world. And this is why we built this, to give people a tool. Like, at some point in your day, you have the opportunity to do the thing you're capable of, the thing that is great. And no one is going to, cure cancer scrolling through viral videos or write the great American novel, in Instagram. So we realized that Fardim is his name, that he was right, that if we walked our talk, that we would have a free offering for, those who couldn't pay, or people overseas who couldn't afford it in US dollars, or students. And you can, when you sign up right now, you'll get the pro plan for 14 days for free, so you can play with it. At the end of 14 days, you can say, I want to keep the pro plan, or you can downgrade to the student plan and do that. Anyway, does that answer your question, Alice?
Thing I have to remember. Yeah, that absolutely answers my question, and that definitely gives the folks here some information, because I used the free plan for a long time. I'm on the paid plan now. I didn't use it much recently because the conference ate my brain. But it has been incredibly helpful to me. It's weird hearing me coach myself, though. It's like listening to the inside of my own head, so that's fun. But but it is like, the free stuff is really helpful, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to partner with you, because I knew that would be really powerful for a lot of the people that are part of this community too. And I've talked a lot with Steven and talked something about neurodivergence and how it like marries into his platform. And we've had a lot of really excellent conversations around that have been just fun and engaging. And we've both like learned a lot from each other.
I have learned a lot, definitely, and just what you've reinforced with me about, healthy breaks and timers and habits and rituals and setting your flow space and hyper focus and all that. Like these are all learnings I had because of our conversations. And I think there's one thing actually that you said that I haven't really spoken about much today, but I'll bring it up, which is we found we've attracted a number of smart people like Ellis to the platform that have said, hey, I want to coach. I think that this is something that would help the people who look up to me. One of them is Nir Eyal, who wrote the book Hooked and the book Indistractable. And he does a lot of writing in Silicon Valley around how these products are so distracting. So he's a coach you can choose. He has a group called Be Indistractable. And he talks a lot about, can you come up with a rite or a ritual or a habit that triggers you into work as opposed to triggers you into distraction? And obviously there are some things that people have done successfully, which is, I have a habit of always getting a glass of water. And the next thing I do is I sit down and I start work. Or, I adjust this, or I have this snack, or I have, some particular thing I wear. So I personally have not done this as much, but I've heard from different users that they have very specific rituals and it helps them establish triggers. So as soon as they get that glass of water, they think, okay, ready. This is where I sit down and I get into flow. So I encourage that for you. If you find there's a thing that you like doing right before you work, to really make a ritual of it, to celebrate it and say like, this is my favorite tea. Okay. I make the tea, I sit down and I'm in. And there's no picking up the phone. There's no folding the laundry. It's like, I have my tea. Next thing I do is I sit at my computer and I bang the thing out. And it feels great to have extra time at the end of the day when you're actually like getting stuff done. I'm talking too much. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet and look for questions, new messages. Is there anything to help making the time blocks start ringing? Your time access. Sabrina, I'm not sure I totally understand your question, but I do want to ask, I do want to answer it. I just want to ask you, is there anything to help making the time blocks to start working? Just how to get started. Okay. A couple things. And I'll mention actually two things regarding this. One is, because we allow you to set a session, one of the rituals that may help you, and this is something I do more, is there is a thing called the Zeigarnik effect. It talks about holding ideas in your mind versus having them, written down and taken out of short-term memory, and how you feel when something is done or undone. And that's why we built that little box. When you open your task window, it can be a great ritual to associate with starting work, to simply say, okay, I'm going to type in the 3 things I need to do, put in how many minutes, and then in my mind, that is my block. Like the next 90 minutes, I'm going to do these 3 things and start that way. So turn that into a ritual of organizing yourself. And again, this is not an original thought of mine. All the great productivity writers write about it. We just built it into the tool, so it's really handy for you. There's the second thing I'll mention is this, which is, I don't know how familiar you guys are with body doubling, which is like, some people go on Zoom and, they have a friend or even an anonymous person just meet them and they mute their microphones, but they kind of have a sense of presence. Body doubling is our thing. Okay, fantastic. We built that. I'll show you this because so many people asked us for it. I'll give you a quick peek. Okay, I think you can see my screen. We built a really easy way to do it. Like when you have centered up, if you like, I want to work with a buddy down here at this corner of the screen. I'll close this. It's not distracting. Okay, down here where it says work with buddy, I can click this. And suppose Alice and I say, hey, let's work together. I click this, start an instant buddy session with a friend. And, we're going to work for an hour together. Then this will come there. That's me. And my audio input device, blah, blah. And then I can simply give Alice this link And what will happen is we'll be able to see each other in center, like literally, like it's a Zoom session. I will see Ellis, Ellis will see me, and it's structured. So there's a minute at the beginning where you share your goals. Like Ellis is like, hey, I need to get through this chapter of editing. Da, da, da. I'm like, oh, I'm working on my new website. I want to rewrite the copy for that. You hit mute. Your screen goes black and white, so it's not quite as distracting. Like in Zoom, it's kind of always in color. We found that it really helps to be able to look up and see Ellis working. She can see me working, and it's silent and it's black and white. There's research around this, if you want to read it, called social facilitation theory, which is the productivity boost that you get when you can see someone working and you know that you can be seen. It's also called the coffee shop effect, more colloquially. So anyway, to wrap this up, if you guys are a body double, it's free in here. Just click this link. I'd give it to Ellis. She clicks it, join a session, and
are you ready to write? Time to work.
oh, there you go. So I would then post that, and I'm down here. And then as soon as Ellis joins, Ellis will be here, and then we could do a little session like that. So kind of fun. And this is how I mute my microphone, turn off my camera, all the usual stuff. So if
Wow, look how much you accomplished. Nail it.
There you go. I hope that is helpful. That's what we build. Body doubling is our thing. Oh yeah, Eleanor. Oh, sorry, Eleanor. Did I miss your question? Let me scroll up. Eleanor. You were always adding new features centered. I love it. Sorry, where it might do it. Might help me focus. This is a time tracking feature. Eleanor, thank you for asking. You know what? We've pretty much settled on this set of features. We evolved a lot the last 6 months. And what we found is that everyone loves the music, the timers, the notification blocking, the website blocking so you don't go off track. We added some features so that, if you are in, like, what's a good group? I'll go back to ADHD Done. If you're in ADHD Done or, Focus and Flow Space, there's a group chat. So on your breaks, if you want to talk to other people and learn, people post what they finish. Sometimes they're very proud to be like, oh, I did my NDA enter AM prep. And you can drop little emojis and just this idea of being supportive. It's like if Jamal, except he's a great mood, he posts an inspirational quote. People post different kinds of things in here to be helpful to each other. So this sense of community and being able to talk to your coach, talk to each other, this feature is pretty much settled. The tasks pretty much settled. Most people seem to like where it is. So I don't know if it's going to evolve a lot, but you're right. It was evolving the last 6 months. Okay. I'm over talking. Let's see what else. Is there anything else? Body doubling. Writers group, yes. Remember, if you, Zabrina, if you want to have a writers group on here, happy to help you host it. You could also put it in Neurodivergent Publishing Lounge with Ellis. Michelle, you need to utilize body doubling so badly. Well, it's free. You can sign up and do it. We built it. People seem to love it. Parallel play, very cool. So both people need to have centered. That's great, Michelle. Yes. So to body double, you would click on the link. They would click on the link. If they don't have centered yet, they would sign up. It takes less than 30 seconds, and they'd be in there. Thank you, Ellis. Feelings are how long things take. How long does it take? Elizabeth, I'll tell you, what you're bringing up is not rare, but I got to tell you, it's that kind of thing where you just start somewhere. You go, you know what? Let me make a guess at how long this should take. And then as you get better at your guesses, your productivity score will go up because you'll start to finish things more on time. You'll start to be more sensitive to this feels like a 30-minute task. This feels like an hour and a half task. And that's one of the things we want you to learn. And you can use it or not. Like Ella says, yeah, some people don't use the time boxing. It is an established technique, but it's not for everyone. And community is a great feature too. Thank you for that, Eleanor, because that was big for me. I love going in the group chat and you see people helping each other. How does time boxing work? And someone else answers it. Does anyone else Pomodoro? Is it worth doing? It's so cool. And someone posts they finished something, they finished their chem homework. Someone else gives them a thumbs up. It's just a nice way of being we're in this together. It's a community of people. And this amount of time. Is it okay to turn on my mic so I don't write an essay? Okay, cool. I'll be quiet so Elizabeth can talk, I guess. Is that what we're doing? Or Heather has a hand up?
I still want to mess up everybody's bandwidth.
I'm sure what I
For everything
need
else.
to do something. Do I click somewhere?
You remember me. I actually met with you during when you guys used to do the free onboarding.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, we had a meeting, and I remember I suggested something about could we record our like every time we do a session, can we record it somewhere on the calendar? And then I remember something popped up like a month after, and I was like, oh wow, he actually did something I suggested.
Yeah,
But,
we're a small company. We do listen.
that was awesome. I was so excited. But I don't. Maybe this has been fixed. I haven't tried it in a while. So I was trying to put my finished sessions on the calendar, but if I go over the time for the session, it would record it as 6 minutes. Like if I went 6 minutes over, it would change that.
Yeah, there were a couple bugs. You're totally right. There were a couple bugs around how the times were posted, and we fixed one of them. The other one will be fixed in Tuesday's release. There's another
cool.
release come out Tuesday morning.
Okay, because I was really hoping I could sort of use it to have a record so I could figure out how long things were taking me. It would be easier to sort of look at a calendar.
Totally with you. And you are welcome. Anytime you have a question or idea, you can reach out to me in Center. You can literally just message me in here, as Samantha did while we were talking, which is kind of funny, or email me.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
What else we got, Alice? I'm so flattered you asked me to talk. I hope this was interesting. And as I said, I will give that more detailed deck on flow states to Alice so she can distribute it wherever you guys would like. Okay. Have a great afternoon, rest of your conference.
Yes, thank you so much. And Stephen, if you want to attend any of the talks, you are welcome to attend anything that interests you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm going to go check out the schedule now. Okay, bye guys.